What's up everyone, welcome back to more Reddit stories about entitled people, insane people, and all that kind of stuff. So make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet for more Reddit content, and let's get into today's stories. Entitled customer meets a broken server. To preface, the story takes place in August 2021. I-20's female was working as a server in a high-end restaurant at a casino in the US. About 9 months earlier, I had sustained a level 3 ankle sprain that left me pretty damaged, including a severed nerve, plantar fasciitis, walking issues, and a few other things on the list. Due to this, I was given a monstrous prosthetic brace to help me out. It extended from the top of my knee to the heel of my foot. One day I had an older couple in their 70s, if I had to guess, seated in my section. The wife was an angel. However, the husband kept finding things to complain about before he had even ordered his food. The music was too loud, the silverware was not clean enough, his water had too much ice, etc., etc. Just one of those customers. Anyway, the food runner had delivered his salad without dressing, and the man had beckoned me over to let me know what a travesty it was that he didn't have his dressing. I let him know it would be no problem to go and get it, but it would be a couple of minutes, as the dining room and the kitchen were a minute walk from each other. This is just due to how the casino is set up. He let me know that this was okay and he just needed his salad dressing. It took me about 3 minutes to go to the kitchen, get the dressing, and return to the table. Upon returning to his table, I saw that he had eaten his salad without the dressing. He looked at me and said, "You should have run to get it." With pure rage and anger coursing through my body, I took a deep breath, pulled up my pant leg to just past my ankle and said, "Sorry sir, I just got this prosthetic leg and I haven't figured out how to run yet." The look on his face was a mix between horror, shock, and embarrassment, and his wife's was just pure embarrassment. I felt awful for bending the truth, but the look on his face made everything worth it. He asked me why I needed a prosthetic leg, and I told him it wasn't something I was comfortable talking to a stranger about, filled their waters, made sure they had everything they needed, and went on my merry way. After that conversation, he did not complain about another thing and tipped 25% of the bill. To this day, I still have issues with my ankle and walking, but I will say the look on that man's face never fails to put a smile on my face on the days walking is the hardest. Give out my phone number so you don't get calls? Cool. About 3 or 4 years ago, I started getting spam calls from realtors, or real estate scammers, who knows, looking for Roy. They spammed me for a week or two, then it stopped. I forgot about it and moved on. Every once in a while, I'd get another one. Every time it was about Roy selling property in a state on the opposite side of the country. Instead of telling the caller off like usual, I talked to them one night. They were happy to give me Roy's full name and the address of the property he kept dangling for sale. I looked him up. He had been using my phone number on all the real estate websites, so he didn't get bothered with calls. The calls died off. I forgot about it again. About 2 months ago, they started back up again. I remembered where I had written down Roy's info and checked him again for an updated phone number. This time I lucked out and found his real cell phone. I considered texting him to stop giving out my number, but I didn't want to deal with a crotchety old man who thought he was getting one over on a stranger. The very next day I got yet another phone call with an out-of-state area code. "Oh, are you looking for Roy? Hang on a sec, let me get you his phone number. It's 999-555-1212. Are you related to Roy? Nope, never met the man, or been to that city. I live about 3,000 miles away, but that bastard has been giving out my phone number for 4 years, so I did some research and found him. I don't know what you do for a living, but you should really be an investigator." "Why thank you, I am. Would you mind updating your system with that phone number instead?" "I certainly will, thank you for being so nice about this." I have not gotten a single call since. Ding the door on my truck and parts will fall off of your transmission. My neighbor years ago opened her door into my truck and dinged it. I saw her do it, but she denied it and there were no witnesses or cameras. I filed a report, but was told it was he said she said and was a civil matter. I had just rebuilt a differential and had a jacked up pinion gear. She drove a 4-wheel drive half-ton Chevy. I don't know what gave me the idea to do this, but I put the pinion gear under her truck, and I put a heavy HVAC zip tie around her drive shaft so it would slap the muffler. I knew what time she left in the morning, so I came out and watched for her. She backed out of the parking spot. Tink, 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 tink. She stopped when she heard the noise, then she noticed the pinion gear on the ground. She got out and I walked up and asked her if something was wrong. She said her truck was making a funny sound and asked me if I knew what the pinion gear was. I told her it looked like it was part of a transmission and she better have it towed. She asked me if I knew of a good shop. Now, this was not originally part of my plan, but I ran with it. I gave her the name of a shop that had a really bad reputation of being kind of shady. The truck was gone for 2 weeks. I asked her what she found out, and she told me the shop had told her that she needed a new transmission and a bunch of other stuff. Apparently, she ended up spending something like $3,500 to fix my zip tie and used car part on the ground. I took my truck into a body shop and had the door fixed for about $300. She was snobby and I know she was talking down to the people at the shop. She treated anyone that was not college educated with disdain. Lunch supervisor tried to inject my sister with insulin she didn't need. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at a pretty young age, 8. I'm very fortunate that I was able to have such a good support system during my primary school years. All my teachers knew that I had diabetes, as well as the lunch ladies and the lunch supervisors, and they never really treated me differently apart from being concerned for me sometimes. This actually concerns a lunch supervisor who me and my sister, suspect to be kinda racist, and happened a few months around 5 after I got diagnosed. For context, we're black, and when we were younger, me and my sister, who I'll call B for clarity, were pretty much identical despite the fact that she was a year younger than me. It got to a point that relatives used to remark that people could almost mistake us for twins. At school, this wasn't really such a problem because we used to act very differently. I was more introverted and very much into books, while she was a quintessential extrovert and was always more fierce. And for people who have seen us day in and day out, it was clear that we were different. Despite the fact that this supervisor knew us by name, by face, and could differentiate us, she would always act snide to us in a way that was uncomfortable. Our school was incredibly diverse, with a minority of white people and mostly Asians and black people, so I honestly don't know where this came from. Anyway, the supervisor knows that I take insulin for lunch, and that I'm to go straight to the nurse once it's lunchtime. I was even allowed to leave early sometimes to get my dose. We were allowed to play for around 15 minutes before lunch, eat lunch, and then get around 30 minutes to play again before classes started back up again. One day she sees my sister playing on the playground before they call us for lunch, and I'm paraphrasing from my sister here, grabbed my sister and started dragging her to the nurse. The nurse's office, in which I and my fellow diabetics would take our insulin, was around a 10-minute walk from the playground, and quite close to both the lunch hall and the pastoral team. And the separate nurse's office for normal scrapes and stuff was really around 2 minutes from the playground. Despite the fact that my sister was crying out, saying, "I'm not OP, I'm B, her sister," she apparently didn't believe her and marched her straight there. She gets to the nurse's office and sees she's not there. Of course she's not, she's at the normal one, and we've already taken our doses. With the nurse absent, she tries to force my sister to take insulin. This is obviously incredibly dangerous for non-diabetics, and despite the fact that my sister was crying at this point, the supervisor didn't care. One of the pastoral team hears this crying, goes to investigate, and comes to the scene. She takes one look at my sister and asks her, "B, are you okay? What happened?" My sister tells me that the supervisor goes silent for a moment and is clearly mortified from her mistake. Then she goes red, and as my sister is explaining, tries to butt in and say, "Well, she didn't say she was B. How was I to know? I thought she was OP." Yeah, that didn't really fly well. No, she didn't get fired. I remember seeing her in year 6, so 3 years after I was diagnosed. From what I heard, she got suspended, not fired, got into some sort of trouble with the board of directors, and had to take supplemental first aid training. I absolutely agree that she should have gotten fired, but she was one of those who'd been there forever. Don't disrespect a woman in her own house. This is a secondhand story that came from my parents. One day a pair of LDS missionaries came to the door. Mom was washing dishes, so Dad answered. He agreed to hear them out and let them in. As a side note, my parents were going to a Lutheran church that they still go to more than 40 years later. Mom is vaguely listening from the kitchen, but is not active in the conversation when this goes down. Dad says, "While I understand you guys came out and all, we're happy with our church, but my wife and I will talk it over and see." The missionary responds with, "You're the man of the house. You should be telling your wife what the situation is." Mom stomps angrily from the kitchen, saying, "I will not be spoken about that way in my own house. You can leave now," before gesturing emphatically at the door for them to leave. The problem, remember how she'd been washing dishes? Well, this part of the conversation happened when she had picked up and started washing the huge chef's knife. So when she walked out to the living room, she was pointing it at them and then gestured with it to the door. Those poor boys scurried out, and the next time any LDS missionaries visited was at least a few years later when they'd moved across town. Dad doesn't invite proselytizers in anymore. You want an omelet with nothing inside? Okay. So my first job was a server at a very popular 24-hour breakfast diner chain. We had lots of colorful customers. One morning, I'm serving a woman sitting by herself. I ask her what I can get her, and she says she'd like an omelet. We have a list of pre-built omelets, or you can build your own, so I ask her how she'd like her omelet. "Just a regular omelet, please," she tells me. "Okay, so you don't want any of the signature omelets. What would you like inside of yours?" I ask. "Nothing, just a regular omelet," she replies with a huff. I pause for a second because this order does occur, but not often. Some people like their eggs scrambled and cooked, then rolled up. "So you'd like an omelet with nothing inside?" "Yes, a plain omelet," she snaps, now irritated that I've questioned her several times. So I enter the order, a 5-egg omelet with no fillings and no toppings. A few minutes later it comes out, and she is appalled. "What is this?" "Your plain omelet," I reply. "But where is the cheese, or the ham, or the onions?" She is irate. "Ma'am, you ordered an omelet with nothing inside." She gets cocky and says, "An omelet is eggs rolled up with ham, cheese, and onions. Everything else is extra. You should know this, working at a breakfast place." I look at her deadpan and inform her, "Actually, ma'am, omelet is French for scrambled eggs that are fried and rolled or folded. Everything else is extra." I'm busy, so I walk off and help other colorful customers. Meanwhile, she flags down a manager to complain, who confirms what I told her and points out that in the menu there is very specifically a ham, cheese, and onion omelet with the large picture in the middle of the page, then tells her she has to reorder her meal and wait a second time. She didn't leave a tip. Anyway, friends, that's going to do it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. If you enjoyed, be sure to hit that like button and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already for more Reddit content like this. So take care everyone, and I'll see you next time.